Hello, and welcome to today's daily Leetcode challenge. We'll be solving question 341, Flatten Nested List Iterator. It's a medium level question. I'll be going through my thought process as I come up with the solution, then stick around for the end of the video where I compare my solution to the solution of others. All right, so let's begin. You're given a nested list of integers, nested list. Each element is either an integer or a list whose elements may also be integers or other lists. Implement an iterator to flatten it. Implementation of nested list iterator class. Implement the nested iterator class. So we're given a class, we have to implement some of its functions. It has a constructor, a next, and a hasNext. Okay. Return the next integer in the nested list, return true if there are some integers in the nested list left, else false. Okay, and your code will be tested the following pseudocode, while hasNext, append next, res. Cool. If res matches the exact expected flatten array, your code will be judged as correct. Awesome. There are some constraints that it is relatively small, and the size of the integers or the type could be negative or positive. So it doesn't really matter. So one thing that concerns me is it seems like we're not actually dealing with the real lists. The nested integer list. Oh, the parameter. The way to initialize this nested iterator class is with another type called nested integer that is not mentioned anywhere in here. Cool, so we actually have to understand what this is as well. So one more time, I was under the impression that we would have actually been given lists like this, but it seems like the type of these lists is also another type called nested integer. This nested integer has some methods here outlined. A nested list could be an integer of type bool. So I'm guessing that, like, for example, if I call is integer on something like the input, it cannot be initially. Well, it will either be true or false depending on whether this guy is a list or an integer. And interesting, get integer will return the actual integer, and then get list will return the nested. Oh, and in the case where it is not a integer, I'm able to call get list to get the. This is super confusing, but I think pretty much we're given this class nested integer that represents a list. It can either be at any point a list, such as this, or an integer, such as this. So each element in this array and the array itself is of type nested integer. The initial type, if we were to be looking at this one, is integer would be false. However, the first element is integer is true. The second element is integer is false, but we don't have access to the list right away. We have to get list before that. So we would have to call get list on the second element of the nested list array, get that list, which in itself will be potentially a list of integers. Okay, so this is very confusing, but okay, so regardless of that, the way to implement this would be by far the easiest way to implement this would be to first flatten this array, flatten this type into a regular array, such as, I don't know, like something like this, right? And then once we have this array, and let's have a index also, self indx indx. If we have these here, these two functions become trivial, right? We can say next is just going to be ret val is equal to self r self indx. Then we would self indx plus equals 1 return ret val. That's our implementation for next, and that's it. If we were to flatten this, same goes for here. We would just return the self indx is less than length of self r, right? So if it's less than the if the place where we're pointing now is less than the end, then return true. Otherwise, return false. So all that's left really is just to flatten this nested list. And let me show you how to flatten this. Def flatten nested, let's call it L. And simply for n in L, for number in L, or element, let's call it element, meant in, I don't want to say list because this is a type, lst list, if element is integer, we could just say self r append element, else flatten self r element get list, and then just call flatten with the nested list. So, I mean, very trivial things here. Flatten is a recursive function that I'm calling over and over again. I'm initially calling it with my type nested list. If this element, for every element in this nested list, if the element is of type integer, that I'm simply appending it to the array. Else, I call flatten on the list, meaning that else is executed only if the type of the element that I'm currently looking at is a list itself. And so after flattening it, we are left with a trivial task of just iterating over the whole thing. So let's see if this succeeds. And we're good. So yeah, again, very easy things. There might be some better solutions. But if I'm looking at this correctly, they are also simply flattening the, yes, they are. They're all doing the same thing. They're flattening their array and then doing trivial next implementation on those methods. Okay, so another simple one didn't even need to be drawn out. Hope this helps, and I hope that this is intuitive. Thanks for watching. I'll see you later. Bye.